The kettle screamed like it was trying to warn me, and for a second I let it, standing perfectly still in the kitchen with my phone in my hand and the morning light slanting across the counter. The sound filled the house, bouncing off the walls we had painted ourselves, and it made my nerves feel exposed, like everything in me was turned up too loud. My phone buzzed again. I looked down and saw the subject line that made my throat go tight. Adoption intake panel, confirmation, and next steps. I turned off the burner, poured the water into 2 mugs out of habit, and sat at the small table by the window, even though Elliot was already at work. The house was quiet in that way that makes you notice the refrigerator hum and the tick of the clock. I opened the email. A date, a time, a list of documents they wanted us to bring, a name at the bottom. Tanya Rodriguez, senior caseworker. There was nothing dramatic in the message, just clean sentences, polite punctuation. But my body reacted like I had been cornered. I stared at my reflection in the dark screen after I finished reading. Marcus, 32. Brown hair cut short on the sides because it was easy. A face that looked steadier than I felt. A jaw that I kept clean-shaven most of the time because stubble made me look harsh in photos. Broad shoulders that helped when you wanted to blend in and made you feel trapped when you did not. I forwarded the email to Elliot with 2 words. It is real. His reply came before my tea cooled. I am leaving early. Home soon. Then another. We will be fine. We are doing this together. I pressed my thumb against the screen like I could push the panic back down into the phone. Then I stood and walked upstairs without finishing my tea, drawn by the same pull that always came when the world demanded answers I did not have. The spare room door was half open. The green paint still looked fresh, even though we had painted it months ago. Elliot had called it calm. I had nodded and agreed, because calm sounded like a good thing to build a family inside. I stepped into the room and let myself imagine it the way I always did when I needed something to hold on to. A crib against the far wall, a rocking chair by the window, shelves with books, plush animals, a nightlight shaped like a moon, a tiny person asleep, trusting us enough to close their eyes. The thought made my chest ache, not just with longing but with fear, because there was another room in this house that existed only for me, and it was not painted calm green. It was a small drawer in our bedroom dresser, tucked beneath socks and folded shirts. In it, I kept the clothes that felt like breathing, not for anyone else, not for a show, not even for Elliot in the beginning, though that had changed. I stood in our bedroom and looked at the dresser like it might accuse me. I did not open it. I knew I could. I knew the simple motion of sliding the drawer out, the soft rustle of fabric, the way my hands would calm when they touched satin instead of denim, the way a different shape on my body could quiet the buzzing in my head. But today was not for that. Today was for paperwork and panels and the kind of stability that came with checkboxes. I turned away and went back downstairs, forcing myself to drink my tea, forcing myself to breathe like a person who was not carrying an entire secret world behind his ribs. Elliot came home earlier than usual, dropping his bag by the door and crossing the room in 3 strides like he had been called back by something urgent. He wrapped his arms around me so tight, I let out a surprised laugh. "Hey," he said against my shoulder. "We got it." "We got it," I echoed, and my voice cracked on the second word. He pulled back and looked at me the way he always did when he was checking for damage. Elliot was taller than me by a few inches, lean but solid, the kind of guy who looked like he could carry heavy furniture without thinking about it. His dark hair was always slightly messy, like it refused to stay put. When he was worried, he rubbed the bridge of his nose even if he was not wearing his glasses. Now he did it automatically. "You are spiraling," he said softly. "I am thinking," I corrected, but it sounded weak even to me. He smiled with one corner of his mouth. "Thinking is fine, spiraling is not." He guided me to the table and sat across from me. "Show me." I turned my laptop toward him where the email was open. He read it, his eyes scanning quickly, and then he nodded. "Panel," he said. "Okay, that is part of it." "The word panel makes it sound like a jury," I said. "It is not a jury," he replied. "It is a group of humans who have seen a lot of families. It is intimidating, but it is not a courtroom." I wanted to believe him. Elliot had a way of talking to my anxiety like it was a separate person sitting in the room. He did not mock it. He did not dismiss it. He just refused to let it drive. He reached for my hand across the table. "We are ready." I squeezed his fingers. "Are we?" He held my gaze. "We can be." The next few days were a blur of forms and photocopies. The agency's application packet was thick enough to feel like a textbook. Every page had the same polite tone, the same careful language that sounded supportive while asking you to expose yourself. Describe your home environment. Describe your support system. Describe any medical or mental health treatment. Describe any factors that could impact parenting. The word stability showed up so often it started to look like a threat. Stable employment, stable relationship, stable housing, stable routines. I filled in boxes with my neatest handwriting, trying to make my life look as solid as it was. We had a mortgage and a savings account. We had family dinners with friends. We had 2 cars that ran and a dog that shed on everything. Elliot and I had been married for 4 years. We fought about stupid things and apologized. We showed up for each other. So why did my hand shake when I reached the question that asked about anything else that might affect the child's well-being? I stared at it for a long time. Elliot leaned over my shoulder. "You stuck?" I swallowed. This feels like one of those questions where if you say no, you are lying, and if you say yes, you are punished. He read the question and sighed. "Yeah." I turned in my chair to face him. "They keep saying they want honesty, but what they really want is safe." "They want safe for a child," he said. "That is not the same as safe for their comfort." I rubbed my palms on my jeans. "My therapist says secrets grow teeth." Elliot's expression softened. "What did she say exactly?" I gave him a look. "You know I do not bring you transcripts." He laughed quietly. "Fair." I leaned forward, elbows on the table, and lowered my voice even though we were alone. "What if they decide that what I do is instability?" I said. "What if they decide the fact that I am even questioning things is a risk? What if they look at me and see a question mark and decide that is dangerous?" Elliot did not answer right away. He stood and walked behind me, resting his hands on my shoulders. His palms were warm through my shirt. "They cannot evaluate what they do not know," he said, "but they can also misjudge what they hear." "That is what scares me." He squeezed gently. "We are not going to tell them everything. We are not going to lie. We are going to tell them what matters." "And what matters," I said, "is that I cross-dress at home, that sometimes I do not feel like Marcus fits as neatly as I pretend it does, that I have been thinking about transition." The last word hung in the air like a fragile object. Elliot did not flinch. He just nodded, once, slowly. "And what matters," he repeated, "is that you are not alone with it. You talk to me, you talk to your therapist, you take care of yourself, you are steady, you are kind, you are a person who can be a good parent." My throat burned. "That is not what a panel sees." "No," he admitted. "A panel sees what we show them, so we show them the truth in a way they can understand." I wanted to argue. Instead, I closed my eyes and let his hands anchor me. That night, my mother-in-law called. Brenda did not begin conversations with warmth. She began them like she was checking in on a project. "So," she said, "I heard you two have your panels soon." Elliot was on speaker, sitting on the couch with his feet on the coffee table. I sat beside him, my hands folded too tightly in my lap. "Next week," Elliot said. "Good," Brenda replied. "You need to be prepared. Agencies can be very picky." Elliot's jaw tightened slightly. "We are prepared." Brenda made a sound that could have been approval or skepticism. "I just want you to be careful. I have heard stories." I kept my eyes on the carpet, on the pattern that looked like waves. The dog wandered over and rested her head on my knee. I stroked her ears automatically, grateful for something simple to touch. Brenda continued, "They look at your home environment, stability, routine. You know, traditional things. Elliot glanced at me, and I could tell he was deciding whether to shut this down. Brenda pressed forward before he could. "And Marcus," she said, my name sharp in her mouth, "I hope you understand that this is not the time for extra complications." My spine went rigid. Elliot sat up. "Mom, I am not being unkind," she said quickly. "I am being realistic. You have wanted a child for so long. Do not give them a reason to say no." There it was, the sentence that felt like a finger pressed into a bruise. Do not give them a reason to say no. Looked at Elliot. His expression had gone flat, the way it did when he was angry but trying to stay civil. "Marcus is not a complication," he said. Brenda sighed, like she was the one being wronged. "That is not what I meant. You know I love you both. I just mean, keep personal matters personal. Present yourselves in the best light." I heard my pulse in my ears. I forced myself to speak before I could lose the nerve. "Brenda," I said, my voice steady in a way I did not feel, "I understand what you are trying to say." "Good," she said, relieved. "But you should know," I added, "that asking me to hide parts of myself to qualify as a parent feels like you are saying parenthood is conditional." Silence. Elliot's hand found mine. Brenda cleared her throat. "I am not saying that. I am saying you do not need to volunteer everything." "Maybe," I said, "but if the agency asks about stability and home environment and they are evaluating our honesty, then not saying something becomes a kind of lie." Elliot squeezed my fingers. "We will handle it," he told his mother. "We have a plan." Brenda's voice softened, but not in a comforting way. "Just be smart," she said. "I want this for you. I want a grandchild. Do not sabotage it." After the call ended, the living room felt colder. Elliot turned to me. "You did good." "I feel sick," I admitted. He leaned in and kissed my forehead. "That makes sense." The night before the panel, I found myself standing in front of the dresser again. Elliot was brushing his teeth in the bathroom, humming faintly. The house was dim, quiet. I opened the drawer. Fabric folded carefully. A soft blouse in a color somewhere between lavender and gray, a skirt that moved like water when I walked, a pair of flats I had bought online and kept hidden in a shoebox until Elliot found it one day and gently asked, "Do you want to talk about this?" Now the drawer was not hidden from him. It was hidden from the world. I touched the blouse and felt my shoulders drop, a tension releasing without my permission. I did not put it on. Instead, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the clothing like it belonged to someone else. Elliot came out of the bathroom and paused in the doorway. "You okay?" he asked. I swallowed. "I do not know." He sat beside me. "Tell me what part." "All of it," I said. Then, more quietly, "I keep thinking about a kid in this house. I keep thinking about school events, doctor appointments, other parents. I keep thinking about what it would mean to not just be Marcus in private." Elliot nodded slowly. "And you keep thinking about what it would mean to be more than Marcus in public." "Yes." The word came out like a confession. He reached into the drawer and lifted the blouse carefully, as if it was fragile. "This is part of you," he said. "Not the whole, but part." I watched his hands. "What if they decide it is too much?" He looked at me. "Then we fight it, or we find a different agency, or we wait, but we do not build our family on a lie that will rot." My eyes stung. "I hate that it has to be political." "It should not be," he agreed, "but other people made it that way." I took the blouse from him and folded it back into place. "I want to be honest," I whispered, "but I want a child more." Elliot's voice was firm. "You want both, and you are allowed to want both." The morning of the panel, I dressed like I always did in public. Jeans, a button-up shirt, a jacket, clothes that said normal, safe, unremarkable. In the car, Elliot reached over and laced his fingers with mine. "Remember," he said, "we do not have to tell our entire story. We just have to tell the truth." I nodded. "Truth measured." "Truth measured," he echoed. The agency building was a converted house with a plaque by the door and a sign in the entryway that read, "Welcome Families." The word families was meant to be inclusive, but it made me think of all the definitions people carried in their heads. Tanya met us in the lobby. She was younger than I expected, maybe late 30s, with hair pulled into a bun and a blazer that fit perfectly. Her eyes were kind, but her posture was professional, her movements precise. She shook our hands firmly. "Marcus, Elliot," she said, "thank you for coming in. I know this process can feel intense." Her voice was warm enough that my shoulders loosened half an inch. Then she added, "The panel will review your application and ask some questions. My job is to guide the conversation and make sure we cover what we need." Guide the conversation. Cover what we need. I followed her down a hallway that smelled like coffee and printer paper. The conference room was smaller than I imagined, but it still felt like a stage. A round table, 3 chairs on one side, 2 on the other. On the far wall there were framed photos of smiling families, babies held up like trophies, toddlers with frosting on their faces. The pictures were meant to inspire. They made my stomach twist. There were 2 other people already seated, an older man with silver hair and a gentle smile who introduced himself as Mr. Larkin, and a woman with tight curls and a calm expression who said her name was Priya. They were not hostile. That was not the problem. The problem was that every word felt like evidence. Tanya sat at the head of the table, opened a folder, and looked at us with the practiced expression of someone who had heard 1,000 stories and never let her face show too much. "Before we begin," she said, "I want to remind you that our goal is to understand your home environment, your support system, and your readiness to parent. There are no trick questions." I almost laughed. There are no trick questions, I thought, but there are plenty of answers that can be misunderstood. Elliot's knee pressed lightly against mine under the table. A quiet reminder, together. Tanya started with basics: employment, finances, our relationship history. Elliot spoke clearly, confident. I answered when asked, careful but honest. Then Tanya glanced down at her notes. "Marcus, you indicated you are in therapy." I nodded. "Yes." "What is the focus of that work?" she asked. "Anxiety," I said. "Managing stress and the way I internalize pressure." "Has it impacted your ability to function day to day?" Priya asked. "No," I said. "It helps me function. It helps me stay steady, especially during big life changes like this." Mr. Larkin smiled. "I wish more people saw therapy that way." Tanya nodded, making a note. Her pen scratched the paper. Every scratch sounded loud. "Are there any other health concerns we should be aware of?" she asked. Elliot shook his head. "No." My throat tightened. Here it was, the open door. Tanya looked at me, not aggressively, just directly. "Anything else you feel is relevant to your home environment or parenting?" My mouth went dry. For a fraction of a second, I saw Brenda's face in my mind. Do not give them a reason to say no. Then I saw the spare room, painted green, empty. I saw a child in it, not real yet, but close enough to hurt. I inhaled slowly, the way my therapist had taught me. If you are going to speak, speak from your center. Do not speak from panic. "There is something," I said carefully, "and I want to share it in a way that makes sense." Tanya's expression did not change. "Take your time." Elliot's hand found mine under the table and held on. I forced myself to meet Tanya's eyes. "In private, at home, I sometimes present in a more feminine way," I said. "Clothing, mostly. It is not something I do publicly at this time. It is personal. It helps me feel grounded." The words hung there. Priya's eyebrows lifted slightly, more curiosity than judgment. Mr. Larkin's face stayed neutral. Tanya nodded slowly, as if she was filing it under information rather than reaction. "Thank you for telling us," she said. "How long has this been part of your life?" I swallowed. "A long time, since my 20s. It became more consistent in the last few years." "And Elliot," she said, turning to my husband, "you are aware of this?" Elliot did not hesitate. "Yes," We have talked about it. I know it is part of him. Has it caused conflict in your relationship? Tanya asked. No, Elliot said. We have conflict like any couple. Dishes, schedules. But this is not a secret between us. We treat it like any other personal need. We talk, we check in, we make sure we are both okay. Tanya looked back to me. You used the word grounded, she said. Can you explain what you mean? I exhaled slowly. When I feel overwhelmed, when I feel like I am performing a role all day, this helps me come home to myself. It is calming. It is not impulsive. It is not harmful. It is not about avoiding responsibilities. Priya leaned forward slightly. Do you feel distressed about it? She asked. Or is it simply part of how you relax? The question was careful, and it made me realize she was trying to place this in a mental health framework. I chose my words. It is both, I admitted. It brings relief, but I also carry worry about how people perceive it. That worry is part of what I address in therapy. I am also considering what it might mean for my identity long term. I did not say more than that. I did not want to hand them a medical timeline or a personal blueprint. Measured truth. Tanya's pen moved again. When you say considering, she asked, are you currently planning any major changes? My heartbeat stuttered. Elliot squeezed my hand under the table. Not a warning. Support. I am not making any sudden decisions, I said. I am working with my therapist. I have a strong support system. Elliot is part of that. I understand that parenting requires consistency and stability. I am not making choices in a vacuum. Tanya nodded. And how do you anticipate this intersecting with parenting? The air felt tight. This was the heart of it, the question that made parenthood feel conditional. I looked down at our hands and then up again. I think children need honesty at a level they can understand, I said. They need safety. They need adults who can regulate their emotions and be dependable. I believe I can do that. I also believe that living with a secret that I am terrified will explode would be more destabilizing than acknowledging, in a healthy way, that I am a person with layers. I stopped myself before I used words I was trying to avoid. I could feel myself wanting to say the neat, inspirational thing. This was not the time for that. This was my life. So, I continued, if we become parents, I will keep doing what I am doing now. Therapy, communication, support, and we will make decisions as a family about what is private, what is shared, and when. But I do not want to build our home on silence that turns into fear. Elliot's voice was steady beside me. What matters to us is that our child feels safe and loved, and that we are honest with each other. We are not asking you to guess. We are telling you how we function. For the first time, Tanya's expression softened slightly, as if she appreciated the clarity. Thank you, she said. That helps. Priya glanced at Tanya, then back at me. Do you have supportive people outside your marriage who are aware? She asked. Or is this solely between the two of you? My therapist, I said. A close friend. And Elliot's sister knows some of it, not all the details. Mr. Larkin spoke for the first time in a while. His voice was gentle. I have seen families struggle because parents hide things that later come out sideways, he said. I have also seen families struggle because the world is not kind. Have you thought about how you will handle outside judgment if it comes? I almost laughed again, but this time it would have been bitter. Yes, I said. That is part of why this is hard. I know some people will not be kind. My goal is to build a home strong enough that outside noise does not become the child's burden. Tanya closed her folder slightly, as if marking a transition. I appreciate your openness, she said. We will need to document this and discuss it with our clinical consultant as part of our standard process. It does not automatically disqualify you, but it will likely require an additional review step. There it was. Not a rejection, not approval, a slower track. My stomach dropped anyway. Elliot's posture shifted. Additional review, he repeated carefully. It is part of making sure we are doing due diligence, Tanya said. Her tone stayed calm, professional. It may add some time. Time. Like it was a neutral thing. Like it did not represent months of waiting, hope stretched thin. Tanya continued. We will also schedule a home visit and complete the rest of your assessment. Today is one piece of the process." I nodded, because what else could I do? When we left the building, the cold air hit my face and made me realize I had been holding my breath for most of the meeting. Elliot unlocked the car and waited until we were inside before he spoke. "You did it," he said. I stared straight ahead. "I feel like I just handed them a reason to delay us." "You handed them the truth," he corrected. "And you did it without turning it into a speech. That is what we planned." I swallowed hard. It still feels like punishment. Elliot's hand slid into mine again. Maybe it is bureaucracy. Maybe it is bias. Maybe it is both. But we did not hide. We did not break ourselves into acceptable pieces. My eyes stung. "I hate that they get to decide if I am acceptable." "I know," he said quietly. "I hate it too." 2 days later, Brenda showed up with a bag of cleaning supplies. I opened the door and found her standing on the porch like she belonged there, her hair perfectly styled, her coat expensive, her lips pressed into that line that meant she had already decided what she was going to do. "I thought I would help you get ready for the home visit," she announced. I blinked. "We did not ask you to." She brushed past me into the house without waiting for permission. "You will thank me later. Agencies notice details." Elliot came down the stairs and paused, surprise flickering across his face before it turned into polite restraint. "Mom," he said, "what are you doing here?" "Helping," she said, like it was obvious. "You two are busy, and I want this to go well." I watched her eyes flick around the living room, scanning for imperfections like she was conducting an inspection. Elliot stepped closer. "The house is fine," he said. "We can handle it." Brenda waved a hand dismissively. "Of course you can, but why risk it? The whole process is delicate." Delicate. That word again, like our lives were a glass ornament. I followed her into the kitchen, where she began wiping the counter that was already clean. "Brenda," I said, keeping my voice level, "the home visit is not a dinner party. It is an evaluation," she snapped. Then she softened, catching herself. "Marcus, I am not trying to upset you. I am trying to protect you." Protect you, she meant, from yourself. I leaned against the doorway and folded my arms. "You cannot protect us by controlling everything," I said. She turned, cloth in hand. "I am not controlling. I am advising." "Advising would be asking if we want help," I said. "Not showing up with cleaning supplies like you are saving us." Elliot hovered nearby, watching, ready to intervene. I appreciated that he did not jump in immediately. He knew I needed to speak. Brenda's eyes narrowed slightly. "Fine," she said. "Do you want help?" "No," I replied, and my voice shook just enough to betray how hard it was. "We want boundaries." Her mouth opened, then closed. "Elliot," she said, turning to her son, "are you hearing this?" Elliot stepped forward. "Yes," he said, "and I agree with him." Brenda's face tightened. "I am your mother." "And Marcus is my husband," Elliot said. "We are building a family. That means we decide what our home looks like." Brenda's gaze snapped back to me. "Is this about that thing?" My stomach clenched. Elliot's voice sharpened. "Mom," Brenda lifted her chin, "I am only saying what everyone is thinking. Agencies do not want confusion. Children need clear roles." I felt something hot rise in my chest. Anger, finally, cutting through the fear. "Children need adults who do not panic about clothing," I said. "Children need adults who can handle complexity without turning it into shame." Brenda's cheeks flushed. "I am not shaming you." "You are," I said, quieter now. "You keep telling me not to give them a reason to say no. You keep treating my existence like a risk." Elliot put an arm around my shoulders. I leaned into him, not because I was weak, but because I was tired of standing alone. Brenda set the cloth down like it had offended her. "I came here to help," she said stiffly. "You came here to manage," Elliot replied, "and we are not available for that." For a moment, I thought she might cry. Instead, she straightened her coat and picked up her bag. "Fine," she said. "Do whatever you want." As she walked toward the door, I said, "Brenda." She stopped, hand on the knob, but she did not turn around. "I do want you in our child's life," I said. "If we have one, but not if it comes with conditions." Her shoulders stiffened. "You are making this very difficult," she muttered. "No," Elliot said. "You are." The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded louder than a slam. I stood there staring at it, my heart pounding. Elliot exhaled. "That was overdue." I laughed once, short and shaky. "I feel like I just ruined everything." "You did not," he said firmly. "You defended our home." I looked at him. "What if she calls Tanya? What if she says something?" Elliot's eyes hardened. "If she tries to sabotage us, she loses access to us. Period." The certainty in his voice steadied me. I nodded. The home visit happened the following week. Tanya arrived on time, alone, carrying a clipboard and wearing flats that looked comfortable enough for walking through a house. She greeted us at the door with the same warm professionalism as before. "This is a nice neighborhood," she said as she stepped inside. "Quiet," Elliot replied. "Mostly families and retirees." Tanya glanced around, taking in the living room, the photos on the wall, the dog trotting up to sniff her shoes. "Hello," Tanya said to the dog, her voice softening just a fraction. Then she looked back at us. "May I sit?" We led her to the couch. She asked about routines, work schedules, how we handle stress, how we divide chores, how we handle disagreements. It was strangely intimate, answering questions that were both practical and deeply personal, but Tanya's tone remained steady. I could not tell if she was judging or simply recording. At one point she asked, "If you receive a placement call with short notice, what would your plan be?" Elliot answered easily, describing backup childcare, family leave, friends who could help. Then Tanya turned to me. "Marcus, you mentioned therapy. Can you tell me what you do when anxiety spikes?" I took a breath. "I have tools," I said. "Breathing, grounding, exercise, talking with Elliot, and I can reach out to my therapist if I need to." "Do you feel you have ever been overwhelmed to the point of losing control?" she asked, careful in her phrasing, in a way that would affect a child's safety. "No," I said firmly. "I have never been violent. I have never been reckless. My anxiety is loud, but it is not dangerous." Tanya nodded and wrote something down. She toured the house, looking at smoke detectors, checking that the windows opened, asking about the neighborhood park. When we showed her the spare room, my breath caught. The green walls looked calmer than I felt. "We have not bought furniture yet," Elliot said, as if apologizing. "That is common," Tanya replied. "Many families wait." I stood in the doorway and let myself feel the ache again. The room was a promise, and promises can be painful. Tanya glanced at me. "You look emotional," she observed gently. I almost denied it. Instead, I nodded. "It is just, we have wanted this for a long time." Her eyes softened again, just slightly. "I know," she said. "The waiting is one of the hardest parts." When she left, she thanked us and told us she would update us after the panel's full review. As the door closed behind her, I leaned against it, suddenly exhausted. Elliot wrapped his arms around me from behind. "One step," he murmured. "We did one step." A week passed, then another. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach flipped. Every time Elliot's email notification sounded, he glanced at the screen like it might contain a verdict. During that waiting, I sat with my therapist, Dr. Chen, in her quiet office with the soft lamp and the tissues placed like an invitation. "I told them," I said the moment I sat down, my voice tight. Dr. Chen nodded. "You did." "And they did not say no," I said, "but they said review, additional review." "How did that feel?" she asked. "Like I am being put on a shelf," I said bitterly. "Like honesty comes with a penalty." Dr. Chen leaned forward slightly. "That is a real possibility," she said. "Systems can move slowly, and bias can hide inside procedures." I stared at my hands. Brenda thinks I should have kept quiet. And what do you think? I swallowed. I think if we get a child, I do not want to be terrified all the time that someone will find out. I do not want to be a parent who flinches at every question. I do not want Elliot to have to cover for me. That is not a foundation. That is a fault line. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. A fault line is a good metaphor, she said. You can build on one, but you have to reinforce it with honesty and support. Otherwise, it cracks under pressure. I let out a shaky breath. Sometimes I feel like I am asking for too much. A child, a stable life, and also room to be complicated. Dr. Chen's voice was gentle but direct. Complicated people parent every day, she said. The question is whether they have support and whether they are willing to reflect on their impact. You are doing both. The reassurance did not erase the fear, but it helped me stand up inside it. That night, Elliot and I sat on the couch with takeout containers balanced on our knees, barely eating. I keep thinking about what they wrote down, I admitted. Elliot looked at me. Me too. What if they reduce it, I said, to a single word, unstable. Elliot's jaw clenched. Then they are wrong. That does not stop them, I said. He set his fork down. No, he agreed. But it tells us what we are dealing with, and it tells us what we are willing to tolerate. I stared at the wall of photos, the ones we had not framed because we were waiting for something permanent. What if we have to switch agencies? I asked. Then we do, Elliot said. It will hurt, it will be expensive, it will be exhausting. But I would rather do that than pretend you do not exist. My throat tightened. You say that like it is easy. Elliot reached for my hand. It is not easy, he said. It is just clear. When the call finally came, it was on a Tuesday afternoon. I was at my desk at work, trying to look like a functioning adult, when my phone lit up with Tanya's name. My heart jumped so hard I felt lightheaded. I excused myself, walked to an empty conference room, and answered with a voice that barely sounded like mine. Hello? Hi, Marcus, Tanya said. It is Tanya Rodriguez. Do you have a moment to talk? I gripped the edge of the conference table. Yes. I want to update you on where we are, she said, and her tone was careful. The tone of someone who knew her words mattered. I could hear papers moving on her end. The panel reviewed your application, she said. You and Elliot have been approved as adoptive parents. For a second, I did not understand the sentence. Approved. The word did not register as real. Then my knees went weak. We are? I whispered. Yes, Tanya confirmed. Congratulations, that is a significant step. I closed my eyes, feeling a rush of relief so intense it almost hurt. Thank you, I said, and my voice cracked. There was a pause, and I could feel the second part coming before she said it. I also want to be transparent, Tanya continued. Because of the additional information you shared, the agency will be placing you on a slower track in terms of matching while our clinical consultant completes a review. It is an internal process. It is not a rejection, but it may extend the timeline. The relief drained into something heavy and sharp. So we are approved, I said slowly, but we will wait longer. That is possible, Tanya replied. I cannot give you an exact timeline today. I can tell you that the review is intended to ensure that we are supporting you appropriately and documenting our assessment thoroughly. Supporting you appropriately. Documenting. I swallowed hard. Does this happen to everyone? I asked, and I hated how small my voice sounded. Tanya hesitated. Additional reviews happen for a variety of reasons, she said carefully. When there are unique factors to consider, we consult. Unique factors. That phrase stung. I forced myself to breathe. So what do we do now? I asked. You will continue with training, Tanya said. You will complete your profile, and we will keep you informed. I also want you to know that your openness was noted. It matters. I almost laughed at that. It matters, but it slows you down. "Thank you for calling," I said, because I did not know what else to say. When I hung up, I stood there staring at the wall, trying to hold two truths at once. We were approved. We were delayed. I texted Elliot immediately. "Approved. Also slower track. Call me." His reply came fast. "Coming home. I love you." I left work early, barely able to focus on anything. The drive home felt unreal, like the world had shifted a few inches off center. Elliot met me at the door before I could put my keys away. He pulled me into his arms, and I held on like he was the only solid thing. "We are approved," he said into my hair. "We are approved," I whispered back. Then the bitterness bubbled up, and I pulled away, wiping at my eyes because I refused to cry in the doorway like a dramatic movie scene, even though that was exactly what my body wanted. "But we are punished," I said. "We are approved, but we are punished." Elliot's face tightened. "Yeah," he said. "That is what it feels like." I walked into the living room and sank onto the couch, rubbing my hands over my face. "It is like they said." "We will let you be parents," I said, voice shaking with anger now, "but only after we take extra time to decide if your truth is safe enough." Elliot sat beside me. "I want to call Tanya back and ask what exactly they are worried about," he admitted. "And what will she say?" I asked. "That it is procedure, that it is due diligence, that it is supporting us." Elliot's eyes flashed. "I hate it," he said simply. I nodded, my throat tight. "Me too." We sat in silence for a moment, letting the emotions settle. Then Elliot turned to me. "Do you regret telling them?" The question hit me like a stone. I stared at the floor, the dog curled up nearby, breathing slow and easy, as if the world made sense. Regret would be easier. Regret would mean there was a clear mistake to undo. I shook my head slowly. "No," I said. "I hate the consequence, but I do not regret telling the truth." Elliot exhaled, relief mixed with his own frustration. Me, neither. My phone buzzed again. A text from Brenda. "How did it go? Any news?" I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Elliot saw my expression. "You do not have to answer her right now." I swallowed. "If I tell her we are delayed, she will say I told you so." Elliot's mouth tightened. "Let her." The next day, Elliot's sister called, offering congratulations, and I felt the difference between support and control like sunlight on skin. Our friends took us out for dinner, clinking glasses and talking about future baby-proofing like it was inevitable, like it was already ours. But Brenda did not let the quiet hold for long. She called on Friday evening. Elliot put her on speaker while we sat at the table with paperwork for training sessions spread out like a second job. "So," Brenda said, "tell me." Elliot's tone was neutral. "We were approved." "Oh," Brenda sounded genuinely pleased. "That is wonderful. I knew you would be." Almost smiled until she added, "See? All that worrying." Elliot continued, "There is an additional review that may slow matching." A beat of silence. Then Brenda's voice sharpened. "Why?" Elliot glanced at me before he answered. "Because of some information we shared." "Marcus," Brenda said immediately, as if my name explained everything. "You told them?" My stomach tightened. "Yes," I said, because I was not going to play games. Brenda let out a frustrated breath. "Why would you do that? I told you not to give them a reason." Elliot's voice went hard. "Mom, stop!" Brenda barreled on. "Now you will wait longer. You will lose your place to other families who know how to keep things private. And for what? For a point you wanted to make?" My hands clenched into fists on the table. My anger flared again, hot and clean. "It was not a point," I said, forcing my voice steady. "It was our life, and I am not going to parent with a secret hanging over our home like a storm cloud." Brenda scoffed. "Children do not need to know your confusion." Elliot slammed his palm down on the table, not hard enough to hurt himself, but hard enough to make the dog bark in surprise. "Mom," he snapped, "do not talk about Marcus like that." Brenda went quiet, startled. Elliot's voice steadied, but it stayed firm. "We are building a family. If you want to be part of it, you do not get to demand that Marcus shrink himself to make you comfortable." Brenda's tone turned wounded. "I am trying to protect you." "You are trying to control us," Elliot replied. "Protection looks like support, not shame." I swallowed hard. My heart was pounding, but there was something else under it. Relief. Not just from the approval, from Elliot drawing a line so clearly that I could finally stand behind it. Brenda's voice softened, but it was brittle. "Fine," she said. "I will not say anything, but do not be surprised if this takes forever." Elliot exhaled. "We can handle waiting," he said. "We cannot handle you attacking Marcus." Brenda did not apologize. She rarely did. She just ended the call shortly after, leaving a hollow quiet behind her. Afterward, I sat with my hands flat on the table, breathing like I had run a mile. Elliot reached for me. "Hey," he said gently. "Look at me." I lifted my eyes. "We are approved," he repeated, "even with the review, even with the delay." I nodded, throat tight. "I know." "And we are not alone," he added. "We have friends. We have your therapist. We have each other." I let out a shaky laugh. "It is strange," I said. "The thing Brenda thinks will ruin us is the thing that makes me feel most honest." Elliot smiled, tired but sincere. "Yeah," he said, "because hiding eats you alive." That weekend, we went to our training session. A classroom in the agency building, folding chairs, coffee in a big metal dispenser. Other couples sat in pairs, some nervous, some excited, a few single parents too. People with different faces, different stories. I found myself scanning them, wondering who was hiding what, who was being judged for things they could not change, who was pretending to be perfect because the system rewarded performance. The instructor talked about trauma, about attachment, about patience. She talked about how adoption is not a rescue story, how children are not blank slates. It was heavy and real, and it made me grateful for honesty in a way that had nothing to do with my own private drawer. During a break, Elliot and I stood by the coffee. A woman nearby smiled at us and said, "First time?" Elliot nodded. "Yeah," she laughed. "It is a lot." "It is," I agreed. She introduced herself, and we chatted about the paperwork and the waiting. Nothing personal, just shared fatigue. But it still felt like community. When we got home, the dog greeted us like we had been gone for years. Elliot tossed his jacket over a chair and loosened his tie. "I am exhausted," he said. "Me too," I admitted. He glanced at me with a softness that made my chest ache. "Do you want to breathe?" he asked, and the way he said it told me he meant more than air. I nodded. Upstairs, I opened the drawer. I did not do it like a guilty teenager. I did it like an adult, claiming his own space. I took out the blouse and the skirt and laid them on the bed. Elliot sat beside me, watching, not with surprise, not with discomfort, but with the quiet attentiveness that had become the foundation of our marriage. "You have been holding yourself tight for weeks," he said. "I know," I whispered. I changed in the bathroom, hands trembling a little as I slipped into fabric that felt like relief. When I stepped back into the bedroom, I expected the usual mix of calm and fear. Instead, I felt something steadier. Elliot looked up and smiled, not wide, not dramatic, just a real smile. "Hi," he said. "Hi," I replied. He patted the space beside him. I sat down. We did not talk about panels or paperwork for a while. We talked about practical things, training homework, the nursery paint we still liked, the dog's vet appointment, normal life, threaded through with the quiet truth that I was not performing in this moment. After a while, I said the sentence that had been sitting in my chest since Tanya's call. "I am scared that the review will never end," I admitted. Elliot's hand rested on my knee. "It will end," he said. "Everything ends." "What if it ends with them saying no?" I asked. He looked at me seriously. "Then we grieve," he said. "And then we decide what to do next. We do not fold." I stared at the bedspread. "I am tired of being evaluated." "I know," he said. "But listen to me. The fact that you told them, The fact that you are in therapy, the fact that we talk, those are not weaknesses. Those are strengths. If the agency cannot see that, that is on them, not you. My eyes burned. I blinked hard. I want to be a parent, I said, and it came out raw, like the words were scraped from somewhere deep. Elliot's voice softened. You will be, he said, and he did not say it like a guarantee from the universe. He said it like a vow, one way or another. The next update from the agency came in writing, a letter with the agency logo on the top, our names typed neatly, the language formal enough to feel distant, approved as adoptive parents, placed on a slower matching track pending clinical review. They thanked us for our cooperation and reminded us to complete our training modules. I held the letter in my hands and felt two emotions collide, pride and anger, relief and resentment, hope and exhaustion. Elliot read it, then set it down carefully like it could shatter. They approved us, he said again, as if repeating it would make it settle. They also put us on hold, I replied. He nodded. Yeah. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where we had filled out the first forms, and for a moment I imagined a child there in a high chair, banging a spoon and laughing, oblivious to how many adults had debated whether we were fit. I want to call Tanya and ask what exactly they need, I said. Do it, Elliot replied immediately. You should not have to sit in silence. So I called. Tanya answered on the second ring. Hi, Marcus. Hi, I said, forcing my voice calm. We got the letter. Yes, she said. I expected you would. How are you feeling? I almost said fine. Instead, I told the truth. Approved and frustrated, I said. Tanya's sigh was quiet. That makes sense. Can you tell me, I asked, choosing my words carefully, what the review is actually assessing? Because right now it feels like we are being slowed down for honesty. There was a pause. Tanya's voice remained professional, but it softened. I cannot speak for every person's internal bias, she said carefully. What I can tell you is that the consultant is assessing how your situation intersects with parenting stress, public exposure, and support systems. They will likely recommend documentation of your ongoing care and a plan for managing stressors. A plan, I repeated. We already have one. I know, Tanya said, and it will help to put it in writing. I want you to understand something, Marcus. Sometimes these reviews are protective in a bureaucratic way. They are trying to ensure no one can later claim we missed something. So it is about liability, I said, and my voice sharpened before I could stop it. Tanya did not deny it. Partly, she admitted, it is also about making sure you have resources. The system is imperfect. I closed my eyes. How long? I asked. I do not have an exact date, she said, but I will push for clarity. I do not want you in limbo. Thank you, I said, and I meant it, even though I was still angry. When the call ended, Elliot watched me closely. What did she say? He asked. I sat down slowly. That they are assessing stressors and support, I said, and that it is partly bureaucratic. Elliot's mouth tightened. So we are a file that needs extra stamping. Pretty much, I said. He reached across the table and took my hand. Then we give them the stamps, he said. We do not give them our dignity. Over the next month, we did everything they asked. We completed training, we wrote a plan, we documented support systems. I asked Dr. Chen for a letter confirming my consistent participation in therapy and my stability. She wrote it in calm clinical language, the kind that translates human complexity into bullet points. It felt strange to have my inner life summarized like that, but I reminded myself that the system spoke paperwork. If we wanted in, we had to speak it too. At the same time, Elliot and I did something else, something quieter. We began preparing the house anyway, not with big purchases, not yet, but with small acts of readiness. We cleaned out the hall closet. We donated clothes we had not worn in years. We made room. One evening, Elliot came home with a small wooden bookshelf he had found at a thrift store. It was scuffed but sturdy. For the green room, he said. My throat tightened. Are you sure? I asked. I'm tired of waiting to hope, he said simply. We carried it upstairs together and placed it against the wall. The room still looked empty, but the bookshelf made it look like a place that could hold stories. We sat on the floor afterward, backs against the green wall, and let the quiet settle. "I keep thinking," I said after a while, "about how close I came to staying silent." Elliot looked at me. "Because of Brenda?" "Because of fear," I admitted. "Because I wanted the easiest path. I wanted to be what they wanted." Elliot's voice was gentle. "And then what?" "Then a year from now," I said, "we would be sitting here with a child, and I would still be scared. I would still be hiding. I would still be calculating every move. That is not parenting. That is surviving." Elliot nodded. "And you have survived enough." I leaned my head against his shoulder. "It is still unfair," I said. "Yes," he agreed. "It is." Time moved the way it always does, indifferent to emotions. Another training session, another email, another week of quiet. Then, on a rainy Thursday, Tanya called again. I answered from the kitchen, looking out at water streaking down the window. "Hi, Marcus," she said. "I have an update." My heart jumped. "Okay." "The clinical consultant completed the review," she said. "They have no concerns that would prevent you from matching. Your slower track status will remain for a short period while administrative steps finalize, but you are cleared to move forward." I exhaled so hard my chest hurt. "So, we are moving," I said. "Yes," Tanya confirmed. "I know it took time. I am sorry for that." I swallowed. "Thank you," I said. "And, Tanya?" "Yes?" "Do you understand why it felt like punishment?" I asked, my voice quiet. There was a pause. Then she said, "Yes." And it sounded like she meant it. "I do. And I want you to know, for what it is worth, your honesty made it easier to advocate for you. I could point to your support, your therapy, your relationship, and say, this is stable, this is thoughtful." Tears stung my eyes. I blinked them back. "Okay," I managed. "We will be in touch about next steps," Tanya said. After the call, I stood in the kitchen for a long moment, listening to the rain, letting my body catch up. Elliot came in, from the living room, reading my face before I spoke. "What?" he asked. I smiled, small and shaky. "We are moving forward," I said. "They cleared the review." Elliot's shoulders dropped like he had been holding up a roof. He crossed the room and pulled me into a hug so tight it made me laugh and cry at the same time. "We are doing it," he whispered. "We are," I said, voice muffled against his shirt. Later that night, we went upstairs and sat in the green room again. Elliot turned on the small lamp in the corner. The light made the walls look warmer. I opened the drawer in our bedroom and brought the blouse up with me, folded over my arm. Not to wear in front of the agency, not to prove anything, but because I was done treating it like evidence of a crime. Elliot watched me and smiled. "You are bringing your whole self into this," he said. I swallowed. "I am trying," I said. "I do not want our future kid to grow up feeling like love is conditional on hiding." Elliot nodded. "Neither do I." We sat on the floor, leaning against the wall, and talked about what came next. Profile books, waiting for a match, the possibility of heartbreak, and the certainty of paperwork. We talked about names we liked. We talked about the kind of parents we wanted to be, the kind who apologized when wrong, the kind who listened more than they spoke. At one point, Elliot said, "You know Brenda is going to pretend she supported us all along." I laughed, a real laugh this time. "Let her," I said. "I am too tired to fight her story." Elliot's expression softened. "We will keep boundaries," he said. "For us, for the child." I nodded. "For our home." The truth was, I was still frustrated. I was still angry at the delay, at the way the system had made me feel like a risk. I was still carrying the bruise of Brenda's pressure and the constant sensation of being evaluated. But sitting there in that room, with Elliot beside me, I felt something else too. Relief. Not just because we were approved, not just because the review had ended. Relief, because I did not have to build my family on a secret waiting to detonate. Relief because the foundation, even if it was laid under pressure, was real. I looked at the empty bookshelf and imagined it filled. Someday, I said quietly, someone is going to run into this room and slam the door and demand a bedtime story. Elliot smiled. And you are going to pretend to be annoyed while secretly loving it. I leaned my head against his shoulder. Probably. He kissed the top of my head. We are going to be good at this, he said. Not like a guarantee, but like a promise to keep trying. Outside, the rain kept falling, steady and indifferent. Inside, the house held us, imperfect but honest, a place where the truth was not a threat, but a starting point. And for the first time in weeks, I let myself breathe, like the future was not something I had to earn by disappearing, but something we could reach by showing up, fully, together.
Did you like the story? Hit that like button and tell me what you thought in the comments. Do you want to hear more stories? Subscribe and hit the bell. For exclusive content and early access, check out our Patreon. You can find the link in the description, or you can watch any of the videos shown on my right. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.